Hey everybody, and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we're looking at Bishop. This is a 4-cost action card from Prosperity, and it says +1 coin, +1 victory point token, trash a card from your hand, +1 victory point token per 2 coins it costs, round down. Each other player may trash a card from their hand. So Bishop essentially turns cards into point tokens by trashing them. The more expensive the cost in coins of the card that you trash, the more points you get from it. It's only coins that matter, so potion and debt in the cost is irrelevant for this card. Now, because it will trash any type of card, you can also use it as a general purpose trasher, right? You don't care about the points, you just want to get rid of the cards. But trashing cheap junk with Bishop isn't really very advisable. This is not necessarily, you shouldn't think of it as a trash card, right? This is a points card. So when you play Bishop, all of your opponents get to trash a card too. Now, they don't earn any points by doing this, but they didn't have to gain a Bishop and spend an action on playing it in order to get essentially the same amount of trashing that you did. So if you're going to buy a Bishop and use it to trash junk, then you've got to watch out, because you let all of your opponents also trash their junk, but at no resource cost to them. Instead of them buying the Bishop, they get to gain and play something else more useful instead, right? They could have gained, a smithy, and now they still get to trash their estates and coppers, but they also get to have significantly better turns than you do. While you're playing Bishop, they're drawing lots of cards. So what this means, while you might want to open with Bishop because it costs 4 and it's trashing cards, and usually you want to be trashing as soon as possible, it can be more beneficial to your opponents than you if you do this. So the benefit that you're getting from Bishop, which is the points, they don't actually do anything until the game ends, right? All points are effectively worthless until the game is over, and then it's the only thing that matters. And you can lose a lot of speed if you're buying and playing the Bishop compared to your opponent that starts just, building a functioning deck instead, while they still get all of the trashing benefits that you do. So, generally, don't open with Bishop, and you might want to avoid using Bishop to trash junk. However, it is still worthwhile to do that sometimes. If you have some amount of deck control and draw, remember, you trash a card from your hand with Bishop, but in the middle of your turn, hopefully you've got a better hand than your opponent, right? You've been playing draw cards, for example. There's just more cards to pick from. Your opponent will only have 5 cards drawn randomly at the end of their turn, usually. Sometimes, obviously, they're going to have more for various reasons. And the key there is that, sure, they will get some trashing, but eventually, your trashing is going to be better. You're going to be able to pick higher priority targets, like you're going to get rid of the estates, whereas they might have to get rid of coppers first. It will be a little bit better for you in cases. But what is key is that this would only be used for trashing junk when you've basically already got a little bit of deck control and you're looking to make it better. And generally, you try to avoid buying Bishop on turns 1 and 2. I've seen people do it and it's been fine, but really, Bishop, it's not a trash card primarily, okay? Don't buy it early for that reason. You want to get your deck drawn and stuff first, generally. So, where possible, you want to use something else to get rid of the junk cards, the coppers, the estates, the curses, the ruins, whatever. And instead, you want to look at Bishop more as a payload card. Bishop works best as its main role, which is an alternative way of gaining points. And you gain it much later once your deck is under control in those cases, and you have a way to start gaining cards that you're going to want to be trashing with Bishop. So, strategically, the sort of decks that Bishop wants to be in tend to be long games. So the game ends when 3 piles empty, or colonies or provinces empty. Now, Bishop, when it looks to trash a card, the only thing that really matters is the cost in coins. Effectively, all other cards are kind of the same, right? You don't get a chance to play it when Bishop comes along to trash it, right? You got to trash it from your hand. You didn't really get to use it. So with Bishop, what you can do is that if you want the game to go long, you don't have to gain cards from critical piles. Like, you want to score points, you can look at what pile is simultaneously got the most cards still in it at the price point you're looking at, and you can just pick cards from that. And that way you sort of minimize lowering piles. If you're grabbing cards from piles that aren't going to empty anytime soon, you're not really contributing to having the game end at any time. So Bishop allows you to play the long game in this way by just not letting piles run out, at least not for a long time, possibly. So Bishop, it supports a way to play that makes the game go long by this, but also it itself benefits quite a lot from dragging the game out as long as possible. Because, yes, Bishop gets to essentially make all other cards in the kingdom be our source of points. But if you're only trashing one card at a time, it's going to take a long time to start building up those points. Bishop really wants the game to go long, and it sort of gives you a way to make it go long by essentially making all cards points irrespective. I mean, yeah, some cards are going to be better for trashing than others, but generally, because all cards become equal in the eyes of Bishop trashing, you just don't have to lower the critical piles. Now, as always with everything, I say Bishop is a card that wants to go long. Everything's got an exception. You may go out there, play a game that's very short, but your opponent's buying Bishop and winning on points. And you're thinking, oh man, that guy doing the videos, he told me it was a long game card. What the heck's going on here? Well, sometimes you may find that Bishop actually does help, in a way, support the game ending quickly. And that is because even though points are not useful until the game ends, you are building up point tokens during the game, and that means if you can end the game suddenly, you might have a point lead, right? So in this case, I've seen situations where someone bought a Bishop because they did want to get a little bit of trashing done, get rid of those estates after they got a bit of debt control, and then this put them in a point lead, and that meant that suddenly they had way better endgame control for what was a shorter game, right? The points are not irrelevant. But generally, Bishop, it's not a rush card, right? You are using it for the long game, but points are points, and they always eventually have some use in a game. So, something that people usually ask, what about trashing victory cards with Bishop, right? When you think you have to trash cards, normally people are looking at all of these engine components they've got in their deck and their valuable treasures, and they're like, well, I don't really want to trash those. So they start looking at what else they have, and once the estates and the coppers are gone, they're like, well, what about stuff like duchies, right? I can still trash them and turn them into points. And that's true, right? When you trash an estate, because Bishop's always giving you a point, then you trash the estate and you get another point. You turn that estate from 1 point into 2. Trashing a duchy is point neutral because you get 2 points from the duchy plus the extra 1 that Bishop gives as well, and it was already worth 3 points anyway, so you can effectively get something like duchy out of your deck, and it's not using up space, but also you kept the points for it. It's like islanding away a duchy or putting it in exile with something. You can sort of think of Bishop like that. You can. It's pretty bad, though, if you use it on province and colony. You do lose quite a bit of points. Trash province, you get 5 points instead of 6. And you trash colony, you get 6 points instead of 10. That's pretty bad for colony. Now, of course, while you may think of this, it is worth noting that if you'd have trashed something else and kept the victory card in your deck, you'd have even more points. Right, instead of trashing a duchy and with a point neutral play, why not trash something else that costs 5? And now you've got an extra 3 points than you would have. Generally, I would say that gaining victory cards in order to trash them to bishop is quite bad. So it might be that you're just looking to gain anything. Like maybe you have Artisan and you're using it to gain 5-cost cards to trash to bishop. And you say, well, why not Duchy? I mean, if bishop looks at all cards with the same cost equally when it trashes them, does it really matter if I'm gaining duchies over, council rooms or whatever? Well, bishop, it helps keep your deck clean. But, of course, you always had the choice to gain something else instead of like a duchy. So, if you'd gained something like a useful engine component, then this is useful for consistency in your deck. So imagine that you gained a 5-cost village like, Bazaar instead. Or maybe it was like a workshop and you got a 4... Oh no, we're thinking about compared to Duchy, sorry. Yeah, so you gained like a Bazaar and, you had a choice of getting like a Duchy or a Bazaar because you're going to trash the card eventually. Well, the thing with the Bazaar is that if you draw it early in your turn, you could have played that Bazaar and then at the end of your turn, a Bazaar left over that you didn't play, like some other copy that you got from earlier, you can trash that instead. And that's going to be way better than just like drawing a Duchy at the start of your turn. It's a dead card at that point and you might dud. So actually gaining useful cards that you might actually want to play and then just seeing what's left after you've drawn your deck and trashing one of those, this sort of stops you dudding and helps keep your turns consistent. And in addition to that, victory card piles like Duchy, normally if you're playing bishop against some other strategy that's trying to drain victory cards, they might want to be gaining victory card piles, and so by you gaining the duchies to trash them, you are contributing towards lowering those piles, which might shorten the game, which might be bad for you as a bishop because you want to go long. So generally I would say if you're going for bishop, you're not really looking to gain victory cards. Sometimes you do for various reasons, but remember, all the piles are the same. Grab whatever is least likely to be emptied otherwise. Now, one of the primary benefits that you get from going long with bishop, well, other than the points, of course, you get to keep your deck clean and consistent. So when you go for a more normal scoring strategy with like victory cards, obviously the main problem with victory cards is that you can't play them from your hand. You've got to keep drawing them and they just clog up your deck and you can't do anything. Bishop, because it turns everything into victory point tokens, doesn't have problems with victory cards clogging up your deck. And if you can have a deck that is gaining cards at the same rate that you're trashing them with bishop, then your deck composition might not actually change at all between turns, right? If you are essentially gaining some card and then at the end of the turn you are trashing some copy of that same card that you gained, your deck is going to look exactly the same at the end of the turn, except you got some more points, point tokens specifically. And eventually the game will run out of piles and the game would end, but if your deck's not changing between turns, then you can sort of keep going with that deck potentially for a long time, right? And anyone who's gaining provinces or duchies, their deck will start to fall apart. It does change over time and it just gets worse essentially as they add victory cards, but not necessarily with bishop. Your deck might not change at all. And if it doesn't change at all between turns, this is something that we call a golden deck. That means that your deck it gets to a certain state and then it just stops changing at that point. Like you're just doing the same thing every turn and your deck's always the same. These are important because these decks, typically they have quite a lot of consistency. You wouldn't really want to build an inconsistent golden deck. And if they're being a golden deck while also gaining points, they can be quite unstoppable once they get going, if they can drag the game out long enough. Because what can you really do to stop them at that point? They just get to keep on going because the deck's never changing. So just you sort of know what's coming. Now, there's a famous combo in Dominion. It's probably one of the more well-known combos, I guess. It's the Bishop and Fortress combo. Fortress being a Dark Ages village, What's key with Fortress is that it can never really be trashed. Well, you can trash it, but you immediately get the card straight back again into your hand. So you get all the benefits from trashing it, but you never actually lose it. Now, if you have a deck with Bishop and Fortress, eventually you will narrow down, you'll trash everything else, and you will narrow down your deck to consisting of only like 4 bishops and 4 fortresses. And if you don't have anything like attacks that are going to get in the way of that deck, like militia or whatever, a deck of 4 bishops and 4 fortresses is guaranteed to score 12 points every turn, and it doesn't need to touch piles at all. It's not like other golden decks where you might actually be lowering a supply pile because you've got to gain cards back, and you can drag that out for a while, but you can't drag it out forever. Bishop Fortress literally doesn't have to buy any cards or gain them at all, ever. You just get guaranteed 12 points per turn for the rest of time. Now, obviously, this is not the first time where you can end up in this situation. We did mention in the Monument video that, it gains cards without technically having to gain everything. But the difference is that Bishop's a lot better at gaining points than Monument, right? How are you getting 12 points per turn consistently with Monument? Well, you probably need something like King's Court to achieve that. And you don't with Bishop. Like 12 points per turn is a lot of points that you can do forever without helping to contribute towards the end of the game. It is literally an infinite situation, by the way. Like, the game does stalemate. If 2 players go for Bishop Fortress, at some point the game will never end, right? And generally in those cases, whoever got there first, you should consider them won maybe and the other person resigns, right? But technically there's nothing in the rules for that. The official ruling from the game's creator is that both players just have to starve to death, which is a pithy response to people asking him that, what else are you going to do? Be realistic. So, it is a game-winning strategy, Bishop Fortress. Now, there are other synergies, but, Bishop is what I call cost-relevant trashing, and rather than repeat all of the usual examples that work with other such cost-relevant trashers like Remodel, it's the same with Bishop, right? It likes gold gainers because they gain you expensive cards, and you want cards that are more expensive. Cards like Rat, Magpie, and so on, they gain copies of themselves very easily, right? And they like to be trashed, especially Rats. So it all applies. I don't need to run through lists of it again. It is worth noting, though, that Bishop has a particular synergy with cards that can gain from the trash, like Lurker and Rogue and so on. This is because, like Fortress, they can effectively not touch the supply piles, right? You can trash a card with Bishop and then use Lurker and yank it straight out the trash, and there's your golden deck, right? And you never have to actually lower piles and go on forever. Same sort of thing as with Fortress, just a bit more roundabout. One less obvious synergy is Draw to X. Bishop's pretty good with Draw to X. Reason why is because it's a payload, but it takes up 2 spaces from your hand. You play the Bishop, and then you got to trash something else from your hand. And normally, it's a payload that takes up 2 spaces in your hand. It's going to put a lot of pressure on how much you need to draw. But Draw to X likes that because that means your libraries and so on draw up more cards. And of course, you get to trash junk cards that normally Draw to X would choke on, like Coppers and so on. So Bishop's kind of nice in those Draw to X engines. This includes stuff like Minion, which is sort of Draw to X, but not really. So some final points for Bishop. If Bishop is the only card in your hand and you can't trash anything, yes, you still do get the 1 point and the 1 coin. Obviously, you don't get the bonus points because you didn't trash anything, and your opponents get to trash a card from their hand as well. Bishop, overall, it's ranked a little bit below average. At first, I was a little bit surprised that it did, but then thinking about it, actually, it does make sense. Bishop can earn you a lot of points. Every card in the kingdom is suddenly a points card with Bishop, but it is slow, and Dominion is a fast game. Now, I do say it's slow. Obviously, Bishop, it's way faster than Monument at earning points, but, it needs that extra support. You've got to be gaining cards to trash. So when you're thinking, is bishop good here? First of all, you need a way to get enough gains to supply your bishops. Bishop isn't really going to work if you can only gain 1 card per turn, because you're just going to destroy your deck very quickly, or you're only playing like 1 bishop per turn, which just isn't enough points, really. You want to be playing, if you can, multiple bishops per turn, so you need gains to support that. In addition to that, you're really looking to take advantage of the way bishop sort of keeps itself clean and sort of goes towards that golden deck type state, where you've got a kingdom, if you let your opponent go for a strategy other than bishop, they're just going to choke on victory points and get nowhere, right? Or victory cards, excuse me. So you're sort of looking for the games that you can gain cards, but in a way that's not helping you just like build up to just deleting all the provinces, right? Sometimes if you've got a game where you can just empty piles super fast, the game just ends before you can do anything, right? So it's sort of a weird balance there. You want to be able to gain cards, but also not end the game quickly, which sort of, the game speed is directly tied to how fast you gain cards. So bishop, it's a little contradictory in that way, and that's why it's hard to end up with games where you get like hundreds of points from bishop. It sort of never really happens, because got to gain the cards and then oops, game's over. So that's bishop for you. So it's very good source of points, or it can be, but generally the things that it needs, it kind of might work towards ending the game if your opponent goes for a different deck. You've got good gains, they will use it to end the game instead. So that's all I really have to say about bishop. So what we're going to do is we are going to head over to the online client, and we are going to generate some kingdoms that have bishop in it. And we're going to see how well it does in these kingdoms. So there is no colony on this kingdom, but I do see there is potion, and there's potion because it's a vineyard game. Interesting. So Vineyard is also a very good source of points, and specifically doesn't want you to trash. You want to keep all the cards. So we've got to think about that. So what have we got here? We have Steward and Island and Salvager as other ways of thinning other than Bishop. We've got Village Smithy, and we've got Ironworks as well. So it's very easy to gain like a bunch of Village and Smithy. And you can use Ironworks to gain other cards as well, like Merchant and Island. Based on that, I'm starting to think maybe Vineyard is the better way to go. However, where is the extra plus buy? There is only plus buy from Salvager, and that's bad for Vineyard. Vineyard wants plus buys so that you can actually buy Vineyard on a turn and also get something else as well. So maybe Vineyard is not so good. It seems like, because you've got Steward, you're going to get thin pretty fast, and then the problem is Salvager starts running out of fuel to use for plus buy, which is unfortunate because you can't use the plus buy then to get the vineyards. So that sort of strategy is not necessarily going to work. Ironworks is obviously very good here. I think Ironworks and Steward, if I draw them together, that's absolutely fine. I still get to do something good with my turn. And I'm going to be using the Ironworks to obviously get my draw up. And it can also, it can gain islands potentially, but what's the ultimate end goal? Well, because getting plus buy is quite hard, yes, we might want to draw, have some merchants like Silvers draw up to like 8 coins. We don't really need to build above 8 necessarily. We can gain cards and smash them with Salvager. And there is Bank, which could get us money, but it seems like we're probably not going to have very many treasure cards, and so we're probably not going to have much money either. What's the best source of money? Merchant, basic treasures. It seems very low money board. For that reason, Bishop might be okay, just as an extra source of points when we otherwise can't gain cards. Right, we can gain something with Ironworks. Doesn't really matter what it is. Maybe it's Salvagers. Maybe it's islands, I don't know. Get the extra plus card when you gain it. And then you can smash that card with Bishop. And it's like having a duchy, right? Trash a card costing 4. Bishop gives you 3 points. And then you buy a province as normal. And that seems like that's going to give you a decent edge against someone who is not doing that, because you're gaining more points for them per turn. So, we've got the gains from Bishop. We've got the engine. But it's going to struggle a bit against someone Well, it's not going to struggle because they've got island, right? They can island away the provinces. But then you're not using your game to trash with bishop. I think bishop's going to be enough extra points to be worthwhile here. You're definitely not opening with it. That would be crazy. Because steward's going to be a lot better to get you thin enough that you can start gaining with ironworks. We might be running multiple ironworks, and we'll be gaining an island and something else, and we'll pocket away the one province we buy per turn, and then we'll trash the other one to bishop, and we're not going to build up to double province because it's too slow. I think bishop's going to work here. Maybe it's only one that you can support. There is only one village pile, and we got smithy to draw. So, I don't really see bang being useful, but I think bishop works here. I think we would have bishop just one for some extra points to really win the tie-break scenario, right? But it's going to be better than just some points. It's actually not bad. So here we do have a colony platinum, okay, worth noting. We've got chapel to get thin. There's also loan and there's salvager, but whatever with those. It's a chapel game. So what are we going to do with chapel? Well, we have village and watchtower for draw, so it's draw to X. Sorry, I say village, obviously. It's the village for watchtower. Village isn't a draw card. So we got a draw to X as our only draw, right? Only watchtower is a draw. Now we do have cellar to help with that, which is nice, but we're not going to have that much junk because it's chapel. We have got conspirator, which works really well for money. And the main problem is, there's treasury as well, but the main problem is that the only plus buy is salvager again. And so it's actually really hard to gain cards here. And there's also Swindler, which is just horrible here. Wow. Swindler's nasty. So what do we want to do? What we actually want to do is draw up with Watchtower and then play a bunch of Swindlers and maybe some Conspirators. And then, you know what? Maybe Salvager is... Well, I was going to say maybe Salvager is okay because you're going to get some bad cards with Swindler. Let's say... what's the worst thing that can happen with Swindler? They can turn Chapel into Estate. They can turn Swindlers into Loans, which are pretty bad. At 4, you can turn stuff into Salvagers, maybe, or Bishops. You might lose your Conspirators. 5, well, there's only Treasury, Duchy. 6, 8, they're all safe. Swindler's pretty nasty here, I think. I want to play a lot of Swindlers, right? You're going to be getting thin. You have to get thin here, or else all your coppers get turned into, curses. Swindler destroys you. But then, because you're thin, every Swindler hit is also going to be brutal. I think Swindler is the ultimate nasty thing here. And you build up to 1 province per turn. You're using Watchtower. Maybe if they do a Swindler hit, you might be able to use Watchtower to throw away what they try and give you. But it seems like it's going to be really hard to use Salvager and Bishop here because there's just no gains. You only gain 1 card per turn. I don't think you can run either of those, and you're so thin with Chapel. So, I think it's just Village, Watchtower, Conspirator, Swindler after thinning down with Chapel. That's sort of the main thing that we're looking to do, I think. But we just can't use Bishop because there's no gains. And otherwise it's 1 province per turn. That's really what we want to be buying every turn. They're safe from being swindled too. Let's see, this is not a colony platinum board. We have Masquerade, Upgrade, Trading Post, and Bishop, all for trashing. So very good trashing. Masquerade is of course key, and we're going to be opening with it. What else do we have? There is Torturer for draw. And there is Workers' Village as a village. Those are very good. As Masquerade for draw as well. I'm happy to play a Torture Engine against my opponent. Yes, they get to put curses in their hand and immediately pass them back to me with Masquerade, but whatever, the curses will run out. Torture is just a good draw card, and it's important to have a good draw card because there's Outpost, which is very nice as well for engine payload. Just get an extra turn, that's pretty good. We got a lot of plus buys, and that means that we could, theoretically, run bishops, even if we're buying weak junk, like coppers. You can, then it's way worse than Monument, which isn't that good, I guess. Alternatively, there's Gardens, but it seems bad here. You want to get thin, and it's very easy to get thin. Treasure Map, well, you know what? Now we're talking, maybe. Treasure Map gains golds. We can draw. We can buy treasure maps. We turn them into golds. We draw them up, and then we bishop them. And that's... it'd take you a little bit to get the golds back, but, if you're running like 2 bishops, 2 turns to like clear the golds out, that's enough to get the treasure maps back and draw. Really, you want to be playing a lot of torturers, and then, so you open Masquerade and Silver, I guess. We want to get up to Torture and Workers' Village, and then Outpost, and then we're just like treasure mapping until they run out, and bishoping golds, and I don't know what else is going to happen. The curses are going to run out, Workers' Villages are probably going to run out, and then your treasure maps are going to run out, and I guess that's sort of how you earn your points. And provinces, maybe you'd never buy them here. Maybe you do. I think you do somehow. You will have turns where you're playing the golds from treasure map, and you are going to have some money, and you can buy some provinces. Maybe provinces just run out. But I think bishop actually is quite good here. You can get a lot of points. You really want to trash golds. They're 4 points each when you trash them, and if you can get 2 bishops and trash, you got buys, you got ways of getting money with treasure map and stuff. So, yeah, I think bishop's going to be fine here. I think we utilise it, but maybe it's the main source of points. It might not be. We have to play and see how it goes. But with Torturer slowing the game down, you've got the time and you've got the gains with the buys and treasure map. Anyway, we're on the next kingdom. No colonies here. Wait, did that last game have colonies? I can't remember. Maybe you're building up to colony instead of province. Well, too late now. I forgot about it. This new kingdom view doesn't show me them, and I forget that they're here. I've already forgotten this kingdom. It did not have colonies, platinums. Right, what have we got? We've got ironworks again, I see, for bishop. That's really good for bishop. Well, it would be if there was an engine, but there are no villages, and there is no draw at all. So this is actually really bad. What's ironworks able to gain? Moneylender, vassal, herbalist, bishop? That's terrible, right? What vassal is it any good? What non-terminals can it hit? Upgrade? Ironworks? That's really bad. So there's clearly no engine here. There is Duke, and there is Bandit, and there is Mine, and there is Moneylender. Can we do a Duchy Duke thing? Well, I'm a little bit worried about Bandit, funnily enough. You can get rid of your coppers pretty easy with Moneylender, and then you Bandit, but that's not really the sort of deck where you want to be buying Duchy Duke, right? But, man, getting to province is quite hard here, right? So what do you do? Bishop just seems terrible on this board. It's just too slow because your deck's going nowhere and you're not cycling very easily. Maybe it is just Duchy Duke, and maybe we don't even get rid of the coppers, and we just use that buffer to not worry about Bandit, right? We got all this junk in our deck, and it's Bandit Duke. Is that even good? Maybe that's fine. I don't know about Mine. It seems too slow, and I'd rather just Bandit. I'm happy to keep the coppers anyway. Yeah, maybe you even get Royal Seal, right? You get a Bandit and a Royal Seal and you go for some sort of Duchy Duke. No, what am I talking about? Because you've got to buy the Duchies and the Dukes. You don't want Royal Seal. Wow, what an idiot. Yeah, I guess you get a few Bandits in your Duchy Duke, but it seems to me. There's just no way to build an engine. Is Herbalist decent in this sort of deck? Because you get to put a gold back. Maybe, right? Maybe we actually do that as well. We get a spare 2 turn. I'll buy an Herbalist. You know what? I'm going to do it. Yeah, this is just terrible deck. Clearly Bishop has no use here. We don't even want to trash anything, really. And yeah, we're just maybe getting to golds. Maybe Bandit's too slow, but I really need the golds to be buying for the Duchy Duke. Good old Duke. So we got a Duke board. But yeah, no Bishop. There's no engine. There's no gains. Really, it's just bad. We don't want to trash. Right, Final Kingdom. This is Colony Platinum. Got to remember it this time. What have we got going on here? So we've got Trade Route, Bishop, and Replace that can trash, which are not great given that there is familiar cursing in this game. We don't have... no, we do have a village, excuse me. There is Nobles, and we have Wishing Well, Smithy, and Vault to draw. Well, Smithy, Nobles, not great. Draw engine, there is Wishing Well that can help. But there's... oh no, we do have plus buy, but it's Trade Route that has to trash to get the plus buy. So we don't really have sources of gains. Oh, but there is Treasure Map again. But what's really going to happen here is that you're going to get a familiar. You're going to go Wishing Well Potion, maybe, and you look to get familiars, and you look to drown your opponent in curses, and what are they going to do about it? Well, they certainly don't want to get a bishop, because it will just help you thin. Trade route stinks, so they probably don't want that. It is worth noting that trade route and nobles means that, and colony, we could get trade route up to 5 coins. Honestly, long-term trade route's probably not bad. Trash is a Curse gets you like 3-4 coins when you do it. I kind of like trade route here, but I definitely don't want to do it immediately because I got to hit that 3 potion to get those familiars. Just junk my opponent, and then they're in big trouble. So the other alternative is that there's Vault. Right, if you're getting trashed and full of not trashed, if your deck is getting ruined with junk, in comes Vault to consistently hit like 6, and if you can get a gold easy with Vault, and then you draw Vault alongside a gold, you can hit 8, and you get to Province, and maybe it's just not worth going for colony. Right, you just sort of Vault big money in a way. The other alternative is that someone can start getting nobles. Like, they will over time get thin. If your opponent goes for Vault big money, they will lose because you can get points with nobles. You can slowly get thin. And they actually don't want to trash from their hand if they're doing Vault money, because the hand size goes down, and that's really bad for Vault. So I think that means that Bishop is kind of safe, but, well, no, we don't care about Bishop because we'll be trashing with Trade Route instead, right, for that long term, especially if they're going to be trying to gain points early. It's really good for the Trade Route player. So I actually think we do build the engine, even though it kind of stinks, because the alternatives are even worse. Maybe even use a treasure map at some point to get a bunch of golds to bootstrap us up to colony, and give us some little bit of extra leeway for junk, but I think we'll have plenty of junk for trade route because both players might just go for familiar. So I think we ignore Bishop here because really we want to be trashing with trade route, which is better. Bishop's not that good, and it sort of undoes the familiar junking. You really don't want Bishop here, I think, because its only use is mainly as a trasher, and I can't believe I'm about to say it, but I think Trade Route is actually a better trasher in this case. I know, right? Wow, Trade Route. But yeah, here we are. Because there's actually a bunch of victory cards here, which is good for Trade Route. Yeah, so there we go. So as you can see, Bishop, as the gains were important. Like, I think everywhere where we didn't buy Bishop here, there just weren't gains. Because we had a lot of decks here where the only way to get plus buy was to also trash cards, and you just can't do that with Bishop. I mean, there was a Workers' Village game, but, yeah, so, I mean, I guess this is pretty standard for Bishop. Some games it's just not viable, some it's going to be good, and that's sort of why it's only really like an average card, I guess, because, it needs help to make it work, and while you have the dreams of the thing where you're gaining gazillion points with Bishop, how often does that happen, right? In practice, it doesn't necessarily, and it's not a trash card specifically, right? It's the points payload that needs work, unlike, say, Goons that just gives you a gazillion points without any effort at all. You got to work for it for Bishop, and yeah, so otherwise it's fun. It's probably my favourite card from Prosperity. I just think it's good fun. Everyone I've played with likes it, like in real life games as well. People, casual Dominion players, they love Bishop, right? It's a smash hit from Prosperity, right? It's always their favourite card as well. Anyway, that was it. I hope this is useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.